happy Thursday and welcome to tea time. I hope all of you guys are having a beautiful Thursday and a beautiful week so far. This time I have a different background. As you can see, it's not my bookshelf and my Buddha. It's actually my little whiteboard and a little mat that my friend gave me of Italy, actually of Florence. We actually studied together there and I've never used it, so I don't use it because it's so nice, so I always just have it up somewhere. So hey guys, welcome. I hope you guys have your tea. So again, different background. So I'm gonna wait a little bit. How are you guys doing? I hope you guys are doing well. Yeah. So I wanted to coffee. Hey, that works. I had coffee earlier. Coffee in the morning and tea around noon. I also drink tea at night, but coffee works. So I wanted to talk today about religion and my transition. Hey Oriana, I want to say Oreo. Hey Oreo, doing well, thank you. How are you? I'm doing good. I'm actually a little nervous about this tea time, but I'm still here and open to share my story. I've been doing this poll thing where I'm asking you guys what you guys would like to hear, and I put out there, do you guys want to hear about my spiritual teachers or my transition from being Catholic to being what I call now spiritual? And that one got the most vote. It didn't really hit me until this morning of like, oh, I'm going to share my experience, and personally it's a little bit scary because I think religion is a touchy topic, and I have people from my Catholic community on social media, but again, I'm sharing my experience and part of my life. So thank you, Oreo. She said, love the vulnerability and openness. I appreciate that. Okay, so my transition, right? Let's talk about it. And if you guys have any questions, any comments, share your emojis, totally open. So yeah, I actually grew up Catholic. I don't know how many of you guys grew up religious or in any type of religion, but I actually grew up Catholic. I was baptized Catholic, and I have all of my, what they call sacraments, which is my first communion, my confirmation, and yeah, it's those four: baptism, first communion, and first confirmation. And what's so interesting about growing up Catholic is that at some point it wasn't my parents taking me to church, it was me asking my parents to take me to church. And I was an altar server, and I did that since my first communion actually. I remember being at church and seeing the little altar servers serving the priest, and I really wanted to serve in that way, and I really wanted to help the priest and be in that space. And I remember so clearly just telling my dad, like, hey, like, I want to do that. And he told me that I couldn't because I had to have my first communion first. So yeah, I got that done, and as soon as I was finished, I signed up to be an altar server. So I was an altar server for years actually, until I was 18, and I really couldn't do the altar server role anymore because you're an adult. So hey guys, thank you for joining. And yeah, so that's a little bit funny about growing up Catholic, that usually it's the parents or the family influencing you and taking you to church and all this stuff, and for me it was the other way around, of asking my parents to take me every Sunday and for me to be involved as well. So I was part of the choir. I did a lot of reading in those what's it called, in Mass they have a section where you read part of the Bible, and I would try to sign up for it. And I actually went to Catholic school too for my junior high, so really rooted in being Catholic, right? And I loved it. I also was in youth group, and I was part of building a youth group leadership called Built. Hey Esley. Called Build, and I was involved in that during my teenage years, again until after I turned 18. So yeah, really fucking involved, guys. Really in it. And I actually, obviously, like, not obviously, but I went to college, and I did community college. I ended up transferring to Cal State Fullerton, and my transition to Cal State Fullerton, I started to really get in touch with more of myself and more of this curiosity of knowledge and how the world works and how mind works, and just so much curiosity. And I was still here and there being involved with the church, not as much because I was so busy with work and with school, but I was still staying in contact with a lot of my church leaders, which I actually am still in touch with now. And again, like, I grew up with them being around, and they were still part of my life, and they still are now. And yeah, there was a part, so yeah, I went to Cal State Fullerton. There was this whole transition of being curious and seeking knowledge and knowing more about myself. And it's so interesting because part of me, when I went to Cal State Fullerton, wanted to do a major in philosophy, and there was this slight fear of, if I do that as a major, I'm not going to believe in God or in religion anymore. So I didn't even think about it. I just shoved it, kept it away, and I ended up doing human communications, which I'm so grateful for many, many reasons. But my friend and I, actually, my best friend and I actually met her in this field in our classes. We actually went to Italy to study abroad for the whole summer, and such a great experience. If you guys are still in school, well, right now you really can't because traveling is kind of limited, but totally suggest you guys taking that program or just traveling and experiencing it for yourself. But anyways, so we went to Italy, and we actually went to the Vatican City on one of our weekends. And it's so interesting too because at the time I had actually just gotten a tattoo, maybe a couple months before, of a cross. And you can't really tell, I actually covered it up, but I got it for one of my birthday gifts. Yeah, one of my ex-boyfriends was like, "What do you want?" I was like, "Give me a tattoo." So he paid for the tattoo of a cross. So again, super into it, right? And we went to the Vatican, and guys, to be honest, I thought that I was going to have the most profound, spiritual, eye-opening experience of my life, because growing up, it was always this thing of how that's such a holy place, and the Pope is there, and there's so much spirituality, not in that word exactly, and it was just a really magical place, right? Hey, James. And as soon as we got there, it was such opposite experience and realization. And my first thought, and again, I'm sharing from my experience and from my own feelings and my own thoughts, my first reaction when we got into the Vatican City was, holy shit, this is a business. And the way that the things that I was seeing, the thing that influenced that thought was that it was so busy. There were so many stores all around. You had to pay to get in. It felt so much like it was a marketing place to just make money. And maybe some other things that I really can't remember now, but it was a straight up feeling of, oh my god, I do not connect, and it's a business. And we just kept walking around. I remember my friend and I were we were like over a little thing, I guess, like with our arms like this, and I was just looking out at the palace or the place, and I remember like saying to her, like, oh my god, this is a business, like, wow, you know? Oreo said like a tourist attraction, and Carla said Disneyland lines. Yes, that's exactly how I felt. So in my mind, I thought it was gonna be not like that at all, actually, not like that at all. But yeah, we were overlooking whatever, and I said that. And from there, I just went on a spiral of really just thinking about religion and my place in it. Carla said, I remember that moment, yeah. Hi, Annie. And yeah, so we went on about the trip, right? And oh man, guys, like and it was just the start. So every single time we went to like a different room, I just felt more disconnected each time. And yes, like, it is a beautiful place. There's so much history. There's so much beautiful paintings. There are a lot of just awesome ass shit in the Vatican City, but just being in that place, for my expectation, it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel good. And like I said, every single room that we went to, it just kept popping up, like, I feel disconnected, like, this is a business, holy shit. And it was a major realization, because I grew up all of my life being Catholic and having this perspective and of this place as well, and I get there and it's exactly the opposite. And we went on about, like, our trip and stuff like that, and I still pondered on it. And yeah, we came back, and that year was a little rough for me, because for me, I took it as this realization that I just can't shake off. Like, one of the things that my best friend and I always say is that once you see truth, you can't unsee it. And for me, it felt that way, where I saw something and I just couldn't unsee it, or I felt something and I couldn't unfeel it. And I'm a curious person, so for me it was this, like, why do I feel this way? What's going on? So that whole year was a little rough for me, because I wanted to seek more knowledge and I was curious, but then growing up as being Catholic, it was also this belief where you can only seek knowledge so far. And it was this belief where at some point, if you seek too much knowledge, you're going to be disconnecting from God, and you're going to make God mad, and God only created things to a certain point, and after that you just can't go further into it. And I was really stuck in that, because I really didn't want to lose my connection with God, and I didn't want to lose this part of my life. And just like all of us, like, we are identified with something, right? And for me, being Catholic and being in that community, I was so identified with it. And it was so scary to realize, like, holy shit, like, who am I if this is not around? Or what part of myself am I gonna lose? Or am I gonna be an atheist, right? And I had a whole perspective about people being atheist of, man, like, do they believe in God? Do they not believe in God? Like, are they gonna go to hell, or are they gonna go to heaven? Of course, like, growing up Catholic, it was that belief of, like, heaven and hell. And it was just so fucking scary, because it was that belief too, where if you let go of religion, of being Catholic, then you're gonna go to hell, you're gonna lose the connections of, like, the church, you're not in the right place, you're on the wrong... I got a call, I'm sorry. Can you guys still see me? So I think you can, yeah. So yeah, there was so much fear around letting go of the religion. And I remember leaving, not really leaving, but I remember, oh, awesome, okay. So I remember not technically leaving the Catholic Church, but I remember transitioning, going to a non-denominational church, and it was Christian, and that was a little scary, because again, you're going to another religion, like, what? Like, you're on the wrong path in a way. And that felt so much better. And even then, I was still super resistant and super scared. And at the time, I was learning a lot about just how marketing works and rhetoric and just the way that people use things to persuade others and persuasion. So my mind was also in that place of, holy shit, like, it's a business, like, they're just trying to influence people to be a follower, like, I don't see any good in this in the moment. So even though I went to that non-denominational church, and it still felt a little bit, like, good, I was still resistant. And I started to open up and have the conversation with people in my community. So I actually went and talked to some of my professors that I was pretty close to at the time, and they had their own opinions, and I was open to listening. And I started talking to the church leaders that I grew up with and being open with them about what I was feeling and what I was also thinking of. And again, like, they had their own, like, opinions, and I listened. And I'm so grateful for that as well, because from my own experience, they never persuaded me to stay Catholic or to go this route or to go that route. They really just shared what they felt being in the community of being Catholic or being Christian or not believing at all. And it really gave me that perspective of all of it, even though it was still rough because I felt like I had to choose. It still gave me a bigger perspective of how to look at things and just the way that they lived and their own systems or their own belief systems. And I remember I was talking to one of my leaders from church, and we went to a bar, which was super interesting because like it's a church leader and we're gonna go have a drink because I'm old enough now. And I remember like just venting like all of this out and so much more at the time. And at the end of our conversation, he looked at me and he was like, "You have nothing to worry about." He was like, "You're totally fine." And that gave me so much comfort in my place of curiosity and of wanting to keep searching and so forth. And yeah, so after I did that little exploration of just sharing it with others and just hearing their perspectives, their opinions, I decided to officially say it out loud that I was no longer Catholic. And it was so scary again saying that, and it was so scary saying it to my parents, and it was so scary sharing that officially to my church leaders, again, because I was super close with them. And Martin, which I love so much, I remember he was worried about me for a long time, but again, he was so open as well and listening to me and sharing his own perspective. But yeah, so I officially came out, and I remember telling my parents, like, "Hey, I'm not Catholic anymore." And my dad was actually a little worried, like, "Well, what are you then? Like, what? Like, ¿qué eres entonces?" And I was like, "I don't know. Like, I just know that I'm not Catholic." And my mom didn't say much, and it was scary in a sense where I also felt lost of, holy shit, does God exist? Does the Virgin Mary exist? Does my, like, what is my faith, you know? And yeah, so again, like, I let my curiosity just take over. And with that, I was also reading books at the time, and I started to read more books. And not that I necessarily picked out specific books to guide me through this process, but I feel that books just landed on my lap. And something that's such a conviction in my heart is that when you're open, well, a conviction in my heart is like when you've surrendered and when you're open and you're willing, the universe will conspire things to just fall on your lap. And that can be people, that can be like books, that can be podcasts, just anything, as long as you've made that step of being willing and open. And that's such a conviction in my heart from experience. And yeah, so I started choosing just these random books that were just interesting. And it's funny because every single time I chose a book, it felt scary, like, oh shit, like I'm leaving religion or I'm leaving being Catholic. And I wanted to share two books with you guys that really helped me get more clear on my own understanding of my faith and my relationship with God and the universe. So the first one is this one, and this is called A New Earth, and it's by Eckhart. I say Eckhart Tolle. And then the other one is this one, which is The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. So really, really awesome books. But yeah, I read them and they gave me a whole other perspective on spirituality and religion and a connection with yourself. And once I started reading more books, I started to practice some of the tools that the books were referring to, like meditation and still prayer and chanting, and meditation was a huge one. And again, even though it was scary, I was curious to try it, and I did, and it just connected with me, and I kept doing it, and it became a transition. I feel like it was a gentle transition from being Catholic to feeling a little bit lost to what I now say I am spiritual. And to give a little definition of what spiritual means for me is just my own understanding and personal connection to God, to the higher power, to the universe. For me, they're all the same. And I know spirituality and spiritual means it's different for every individual, and that's just my own. And now there's a whole other perspective that I have with religion where I don't think that it's just business. I do feel certain ways about it, but I also feel that there's a purpose for it. And hey guys, I'm gonna wave. I hope you guys are doing well. I actually wanted to share an analogy that the Dalai Lama shared, because I heard this in my transition and it just made so much sense. It was like an aha moment for me. And he said, okay, let me see if I don't want to butcher it, but so he said how every religion has its core. And the core is love, compassion, empathy, forgiveness, and so forth. And he was saying how that's like water. And he said that religion is like tea. Like there's different types of tea, and whenever you put the tea in the water, it just dissolves and it just becomes together like one, right? So that made so much sense to me, like, oh shit, like it's true, like every religion has every religion has its main teachings, and it's all the same, and everything else are just branches of that, and that's different. The practices, the beliefs, the routines are different, and that's the tea. It's just different, but it's all the same. And yeah, like I said, in that moment, that made so much sense to me. And another thing that he also said that actually also was like a aha moment for me was that religion could be also like medicine, where it just works for people in different ways and it still has its purpose. And he mentioned how not like one medicine doesn't work for everybody, right? Like we have different bodies, so it's different medicines works differently for different people. And yeah, he said it's like religion works different for different people, where some people connect more to being Catholic and some people connect more to being Hindi or Hinduism and so forth. And that also made sense to me. So Carla said, different tea, it's all water. Yeah, it's all water. And yeah, so that's another thing that also made a lot of sense to me. And I wanted to also like share that with me being open to being curious and to explore, I've also had this realization where I don't have to choose one. Going back to that realization of how it's all water, how it's all the same, I do connect with different religions in different ways. Like I meditate, I like to chant, and I still do my prayer, and I'm actually reading a book right now called A Course in Miracles. And when you read this, it's based more on Christianity more than any other religion. And there's such freedom in that as well, where, again, it's this realization and this feeling of, I'm gonna walk my own path, and whatever connects with me, I'm gonna do it. And whatever feels good, I'm gonna do it. And I feel like it goes back to that, where how do we feel when we're doing these practices? Can we connect in our own way to God or to the universe and to ourselves? And that's been my practice. That's been my transition, where I'm spiritual in that path, or if that makes sense. So yeah, do you guys have any questions? Do you guys have any comments or anything that you guys would like to share? And also, like, another realization that I've had is that when I was Catholic, I had this thing where the only time where you can really feel and talk to God was on the weekends, on Sundays, when you were at church, you know. And because I always wanted to talk to God, like I would go to Mass sometimes on Tuesdays, sometimes I'd go on Thursdays, and sometimes I'd go during the week. They have like a little place where you pray, and it's like the hostia, like the bread of Jesus. And sometimes I would do that, you know, and with my transition or with my belief now, it's wait, like I don't have to go to church. I can connect to the universe, to God in any given moment. Oh, Annie said, what you believe in doesn't need a title. That's true, right? Because then I feel like it's adding like a label, just like being Catholic or being Hindu or so forth. But yeah, so now when people ask me like what am I, sometimes I'll say like I'm spiritual, or sometimes I'll say like I'm all of it and I'm none of it. And then they'll ask questions, or they'll be like, okay. But that's usually my response. Anything else you guys would like to share? Any questions? So Carla said, how does being religious feel different from being spiritual? Ooh, the first thing that comes up for me is that I feel so much more free. I feel so much more connected. If anything, I think now, I am more connected to myself and to God now than I ever was before. From being spiritual. So I feel like that's been a huge difference in being religious and being spiritual, the freedom and that deep connection I also feel. And yeah, freedom is like a huge one that pops up, and now it feels, not that it didn't feel good before, it did feel good serving, being an altar server, being at church and being in that space, but now it feels for myself so much better. There's more peace, there's more like flow, I guess, because I think before there was still fear involved in my stance of being religious, where I had to be good or be kind, or I had to follow the practices of being Catholic, or else God was going to be mad, or I was going to go to hell, or like little things like that. And now it feels like it's just all grace, where it's, let me see, yeah, where it's all just grace, where there's no resistance if I'm a bitch one day, you know, like God's not gonna be mad at me for that. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? But there's more freedom in a sense of also being human, I feel. What about for you, Carla? Because I know you grew up Christian, and now you're in that same space as I am. Carla said, yes, it does make sense. She said, I feel less guilty. Yeah. It does go back to that, right? Where you feel guilty if you do certain things or say certain things, and now it feels like there's more forgiveness or more acceptance as well, I feel. Annie said, less pressure. Oh, definitely. Definitely. There's less pressure of being that type of person, in a way. Of, again, like following the practices or having to be a certain person. Carla said, more freedom, and I see God everywhere, and everyone and everything. Yeah. I totally agree with that too. Because God is everywhere and is in everyone and everything. And then Carla said, I see and feel God within me as I love myself. And Annie said, it's like more your own path than religion's path. Yeah. That's why I think it probably feels a lot more free, because it is your own path. You go back to like, do I connect with this? Do I feel good with this? Rather than, oh, this is what I have to do. to connect to God, because this is what I'm being told that I have to do. So there's that pressure as well. But yes, thank you guys for sharing. I like this conversation. Totally like this conversation. Okay, so is there anything else that you guys would like to share? Any questions? Any comments? I feel like I have more to share, but it's not coming up, so it's alright. Oh, and then also Ram Dass. So listening to him has also given me more of that freedom and more of letting go of my identity of being Catholic or growing up Catholic. And it's so funny because I keep listening to his podcast like these last couple of days, and the introduction to his videos is something along the lines of, there was this fear of losing my identity, but there was always this wonder. And that's exactly how I felt with leaving religion and leaving the identity of being Catholic into the unknown of whatever else was. And whenever I hear that, like, I always think about this transition of mine, and it's like, oh yeah, like, there's always that wonder, and no matter how, like, not how hard I try to, like, resist it, but that wonder is always there, and it always overpowers the fear in my life, in my identity, or my path, I guess. Carla said, yes, Ram Dass is the shit. Hell yeah, he is. I love Ram Dass, so look him up. So he's all about, we're all one, and we're all love and light, and also, like, our heads and our egos. So, okay, so I'm gonna conclude this tea time. Thank you guys for showing up. Much, much love. I love you guys all. If you guys have any questions or any comments, feel free to message me, and we can just have a talk about it, or a chat about it. And I wanted to end with this quote, which is by the Dalai Lama, since I've been mentioning him a lot. And oh, also, like, last little note, I've actually, look, there's like a Buddha and a cross. So before, when I was Catholic, this would not be happening. It'd be this, like, black and white perspective of, like, you only have to choose one. Now I wear both of them from time to time. And I actually have a Buddha, and there's a rosary around it. Okay, so I'm gonna end it with this quote. So much, much love, guys. I hope you guys have a beautiful weekend. So again, this quote's from the Dalai Lama. The more you're motivated by love, the more fearless and free your actions will be. Sweet. So it's short and simple. So again, much, much love, guys.